Power Hour with John Lee.
Rock and roll. Okay, welcome back to the Power Hour. I'm John Lee. This is going to be great. I'm going to talk about something that I love. Not an expert, just what they call in English an aficionado when they're trying to sound posh, which is just the Spanish word aficionado pronounced really badly. And it just means fan. So don't feel posh when you're saying that, because you're not. And there is a lot of that kind of stuff in the study of cinema, as I've found in my life, having done it to a certain extent. A lot of kind of cheesy vocabulary, a kind of desire to make anything in the world sound French, just because we have the idea that the French are more sophisticated, and also they pretty much invented cinema with what they call the Lumet brothers and the old train of Rooney rolling into the station. So we've come a long way since there, as we know. And I'm going to do today just a collection, not a list, of film directors who've hit my basic criteria. Although I've just had a conversation with Omar, who's thrown a bit of a spanner in the works. So what I've done is I've said, right, I want directors who have directed, but created at least 3 platinum films, 3 platinum projects independent from each other. And when I say that, I mean films that go in the top category of films for me, in my opinion. And from each of those 3, my intention is to choose one that speaks to me for a particular reason and explore it a little bit and see if we can form some kind of conclusion. It's only ever going to be my opinion anyway. So, I'll talk to anybody, especially somebody who really feels something about a film rather than pure academia, which is also great. I love to learn from other people. So today it's just me, and what I like. So we're starting with Alfred Hitchcock, English, born in London. That's about all I need to know, to be honest, outside his work. Well, in today's context, we're looking at what films did he produce that I would put in the platinum, that stand there as great films, great pieces of cinema. Right, there may be many, but there are many. But I've chosen The Birds as the first one. Why did I choose The Birds? I'm not going to go into detail about The Birds. It's one of the 3, but it's not the one I've chosen. So, why Birds? Because I saw it when I was a kid, about 8, maybe 8 or 9, and it's called The Birds, and I didn't think anything of it. And then you realise what the film's about, and the birds start going on the attack, and it is not nice. You would not like to be attacked by birds. They come smashing through windows, just filling the room. It's like airborne piranhas. It's scary, and you can't hide. There's no way you can go, and they can just disappear like that. Even if you get your flamethrower out, you're having a mare, especially in your own house. So I'll leave that for you watching. If you want to go back and check The Birds, if you haven't seen it, and you like cinema, go and watch that. I'm telling you, I think it's a scary film, even to this day. North by Northwest was the second one that didn't make it in from Alf. Now, why is North by Northwest in there? Because it's a real thriller. And it starts in fairly innocuous circumstances, but quickly becomes quite complicated, as Hitchcock films often do. It's questions of identity. Is he really who he says he is? Who knows who he is and what does he know? That kind of classic Hitchcock type stuff. But cinematically, it just becomes more and more grandiose as you go through it. Obviously the famous plane scene, the crop duster scene is extremely dramatic. The grand finale, nail-biting, literal cliffhanger type stuff. And he's studied heavily. North by Northwest, I think, is one of the most heavily studied films in cinema, along with obviously Citizen Kane, which I don't like. Bores me to tears, that film. And I've had to study it many times, and it bores me. So what did I select from Hitchcock? So he's got some good entries there, but what did I select? Psycho, the obvious one. To me, anyway. Psycho. So what's the crack with it? What's the story? Well, there's a young girl, and I was early 20s maybe, and she works in a bank, and she's very beautiful, and it's the part is played by Janet Leigh, who then went on to be a massive star, and the mother of Jamie Lee Curtis, and Tony Curtis was the father, and she was a huge star in her own right. Musicals and all that, but they brought her in for this film, and so she's playing the part, and she gets the opportunity to steal $40,000, and this is back in the day, and she's stealing it from a guy who's a right lech, sitting on he's like 60 years old, he's sitting on a desk and leching on her, and I think she's got the idea because she wanted to be with a boyfriend, but her boyfriend's got no money, and he's got an ex-wife and all that kind of stuff, responsibilities there, and so she just gets the idea in her head to steal this money because the opportunity's there, and she takes the opportunity and she flees with the cash, and she's trying to get to her boyfriend basically with this money, and she stops at the Bates Motel, which is where we meet Norman and Norman's mother, and she's up in the house shouting and bawling, quite a nasty character, while Norman is a contrast to that. He's quite sweet and quietly confident kind of chap. Although he does have his little brief moments of unnecessary intensity during the first interactions in the hotel, or the motel it is actually, and then she's having a shower. Push comes to shove, she's having a shower, and we see the silhouette come in. The classic shower scene. The shower curtain comes back. We get the silhouette of a woman with a big knife, and it's a struggle, and the young blonde girl who made a bad decision is dead, and we get the blood swirling round, and that scene stands definitely in the pantheon of great cinematic moments, and scared everyone to death. And it wasn't so much the blood was good, it was well shot, but it was the silhouette, it was the knife, it was the female killer, I think, that stunned everybody at that point in time, certainly. And there's not many examples of it either. So the girl's dead. And the next thing we see is Norman, the son. He's taken responsibility for this. He's decided to clean up his mother's mess and dump the body in a car and put the car in a pond or a river or whatever it's called, where things sink. And that's that. But this causes investigation because people are chasing this girl because she's stolen money. So they go out there to investigate Norman Bates. And they feel like they have to get past him and find his mother and talk to his mother in the house. But during this investigation, they realise that his mother's been dead for 10 years. And that causes some confusion, obviously. And then as the film builds, they decide to go into the house. The sister of the girl who's been killed decides to go into the house, another great actress and beautiful girl. And she goes in there and she's confronted by Mrs. Bates, who's laughing when she runs in. Quite a terrifying scene as she comes running in with the big knife again and just this kind of mania about her. And she's tackled from behind by the boyfriend of the dead girl, who's the kind of catalyst for the whole thing, really. And he tackles the woman, but as we quickly realise, it's not Mrs. Bates at all. She has been dead for 10 years. And it's Norman, dressed up as his mother. And you think, what the hell is going on there? That's some twisted shit, that you're attacking people you don't know and killing them with knives dressed as your mother. So how is the story told? What does Hitchcock do here? Well, he uses black and white. Now, I know you might say, well, John, they didn't have that many options. In 1960, this film was released, so late 50s he was making it. How many options did he have? Did he have lots of colour options? Good colour? Are you going to get that kind of Elvis Presley film kind of colour? Or are you going to get quality? And I think he actually chose black and white. I think he's used it as his medium as his canvas, because along with the heavy music, you know, when you look at Hitchcock, he really uses that kind of strings, a lot of strings. There's a suddenness to it that kind of knocks you off your balance while you're watching it, and also the depth, the resonance of black and white is striking, and the use of shadow. The man throws shadow, so it's constantly flicking across your eye line, and that's why you can't quite settle in your seat. There's a constant like reminder that anything can happen at any moment, and it will not be what you expected probably. And so I think that Alfred Hitchcock certainly was the master. He's got his own genre.
They are watching. They'll see. They'll see and they'll know and they'll say, why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.
You know, we would say Hitchcockian, you know. So it's not actually an Alfred Hitchcock film, but it's trying to be, or it's nearly as good, but it's of that ilk. And we call it a Hitchcock film, even when it's not sometimes. You know, it's like a Hitchcock film. We say that all the time. But what's great about this, looking back, especially in 2021, is that we have strong female characters, which is good, because they're not, they're not accentuated in any way unnaturally. They're not patronised, they're not tokens, they're not sex objects. They're people. The characters with intelligence and tenacity and femininity as well, and it's great. And of course, another groundbreaking and potentially damaging, some people believe, aspect of this film was that we really got to know the serial killer, the schizophrenic, because the character Norman Bates was that. He was a schizophrenic. He murdered his mother and his father because he was jealous of his mother and her boyfriend, because he was jealous of their relationship. And then he adopted the identity of his mother, but only half the time. So he was, in half his mind he was the son, and in half his mind he was the mother, and he was always at war. And of course the mother won. She dominated him inside his own mind. It wasn't actually his mother, of course, but you would say that was some kind of projection of the relationship that they had before, perhaps, in terms of control and in terms of strength. But she wasn't a serial killer, he was. And this is based on a guy called Ed Gein, absolutely foul, crazy individual who killed 3 women, including his mother, and used the skin to make lamps and all kinds of furniture in his own house. And he was the basis of the film, of Psycho, of Norman Bates. And what's curious then is that people say, well, many serial killers in the 60s and 70s in America were inspired by Norman Bates, but Norman Bates was actually inspired by Ed Gein. So it's, art imitating life, and then life imitating art, as we see all the time. So that's fantastic. We're smashing that one in. First one, Psycho. Boom. Alfred Hitchcock, Psycho. So I don't know how many points to give to Hitchcock for that. What level of importance do you give it, and how do you rate the film? We're going to smash across now to another absolute legend in the world of cinema, Mr. Stanley Kubrick. Wow. I mean, 3. Same with Hitchcock. I mean, you have to get 3 to be in it. So there are directors who are not in this because they didn't come up with 3 individual projects that I value as a platinum film. And I could be wrong. But Stanley doesn't have that problem. He's got the opposite. It's which ones do you choose and why? So the ones I've gone for were Space Odyssey 2001. So there's a very conspicuous fascination with space that we can see coming from Stanley. And Space Odyssey 2001, again, I would put it in the pantheon and the hierarchy in terms of quality and in terms of innovation. And it's one of the most studied films in history. We know the classic when the bone flies up The caveman, the Neanderthal, throws the bone up and it turns and it becomes the space station. Very nice, very innovative, very clever. And so Space Odyssey 2001 is probably not the most popular space-related film, sci-fi film in history. It's up there, but I would say probably Star Wars. But is Star Wars better than Space Odyssey? Don't know. I mean, you guys can answer that one. I think it's a good film. Not one of my absolute favourites, but definitely an important moment in cinema. And incredible in terms of the quality. You watch it back now, it's brilliant. The way it's shot is amazing. And then we've got Clockwork Orange, which is a total departure, really. It's not like that. It's not that kind of film. But in terms of what we call mise en scène, and this is what I was referring to earlier, people throwing French expressions around, but this actually is what it is. It's not fluff. It means what's in the scene, that which gives you information, So if I'm sitting here with a gun, that gives you some information. If I've got a bear's head on the wall behind me, that gives you some information. So that's mise en scène. And so Clockwork Orange is just an exhibition of that. It's absolutely incredible. Every scene is full of little indicators. And that's what Kubrick's known for, communicating on so many different levels, way beyond the spoken word. And that's actually exemplified in the film because they speak in their own language, more or less. And so you're not really following the dialogue in the same way as you normally would. You're trying to figure it out, obviously, but it's not as prominent as is other forms of communication, particularly the mise en scène. What's in the scene? What's in the image? What's speaking to you that you're looking at? And it's a disturbing film. It really is. I mean, he's getting the brain treatment and all that, the LSD, the MK Ultra mind experiments. Really happened and really, really was terrible. And so we see that in the film. And Kubrick does a lot of that. I mean, a lot of people will be thinking, what about Eyes Wide Shut? Yeah, I know. Eyes Wide Shut, exposing the Illuminati, exposing these sex and devil cults, which is a story in itself because today I've had to go for The Shining. I don't know why, I just had to in the end. I couldn't not more than anything else. If you prefer one of the other two, Space Odyssey, Clockwork Orange, or anything else, that's fine. I don't think I'm more correct than you. I've just gone for The Shining because it affects me every time, strongly. So what's the crack with it? It's a story of an ordinary man, really, called Jack, who wants to write a book. He's a writer, budding writer, aspiring writer, and he wants to write a book. But he hasn't got too many professional qualifications or opportunities, and so he's kind of more or less looking for menial work or physical work, but not really wanting that in life. And he's got a wife and a kid, and he's offered a job as a caretaker in a hotel, and it's up in the sticks, and he has to do it in winter, so he's going to be snowed in all the time with the wife and the kid in this massive hotel. Now, most people wouldn't be overly enthusiastic about that. But Jack is, because he wants to write a book. That's the whole point. He wants the solitude to write a book. And so they go there and he starts writing a book. And he's got a big room and he's in there typing and he starts getting angry with his wife for interrupting him, even though she's a lovely girl. And he's snapping at her and it's quite uncomfortable to watch. And then, I mean, the hotel, I'll get back to all this, but a hotel is not your average hotel. And she starts to get scared of him, scared of Jack, and Jack's connecting with this hotel in ways that are hard to explain, and so is the son. Really, it's only the mother that just sees it as a building, as a hotel, which is what it is, ostensibly at least. And so Jack goes crazy quite quickly. It's not a long process, and he gets violent, and he starts abusing his wife, really. And she doesn't tolerate that. In her meek and mild way, she slaps him with a baseball bat and sends him flying down the stairs. And then she drags him into a storage room and locks the door. And this is before, this is before he gets out. One of the people in the hotel apparently lets Jack out, and this is when he goes out really, really psycho. And the famous, infamous scene, bang, bang, with the axes coming through the door, and he's sticking his face through. Here's Johnny, like that. And she's there cowering with the knife. But anyone would be scared of that maniac with an axe. And they make quite a rudimentary escape in the end, the wife and the son. And Jack freezes to death in the forest. So spoilers all over that, but, you should have seen it coming. So how does he tell the story, and what's significant about it? Well, everything, every single frame, really, with Kubrick. So you start in a film where you've got this little yellow car on a winding road going down, precariously close to the ridge or to the edge of the cliff, and you're looking at it, and it's a winding road like that, and it just looks so small, that car, and the cliffs look so big, and it just keeps you immediately getting an uneasy feeling from it, like a strong breeze is going to blow that car, deep into the valley, and it's going to explode. And so it's kind of making you nervous from the beginning, to the point where there was, right near the start, I was watching it the other day, and it comes on like that, Tuesday, and I jumped. I thought, well, if I'm going to jump at the word Tuesday, I'm fucked. And I was. And how does Stanley Kubrick do that to you? Well, one of the ways he does it is with the colour red. As we know, the colour red means blood, it means danger, it means death, and it's represented in that way always in cinema, certainly in thrillers. And so, for example, in The Sixth Sense, M. Night Shyamalan, I think it's pronounced like that. He made this film about a guy who's dead and doesn't know it, basically. And whenever you get close to death, it's symbolised in red. There's a door that he can't open, and the doorknob is bright red, and it's the only red thing in the shot. And he goes to a funeral, and the woman who's done it is in a red dress, and everyone else is wearing black. So this film, The Shining, is chock-a-block with red. Everywhere you look, in every scene. And when you realise that that is done to make you uneasy and to make you nervous, and you see how prominent it is in The Shining, to constantly reinforce the idea that death is just around the corner, you think you're pretty ruthless, really, aren't you, Stanley? You know what I mean? You're not giving the viewer even a second to chill out. And this is supported with the piano, with music in general, but the piano is so heavy in it. Ding, 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 that kind of stuff where it's just offbeat. It doesn't give you a rhythm that you can actually settle into. And of course, I mean, mise en scène, as I said before, everything in the image is telling you something. You have to pause it every couple of seconds to really analyse it properly. But yeah, I mean, the drama of the scenes, the two young girls, the children in the hotel, the woman in the bath, the general vibe of everybody and the way they talk. Definitely, if you haven't seen it, you must watch it. And look out for the moon hoax evidence. So we know about the moon landing. I think it should be called the fucking about in the studio, where they're supposed to be on the moon and, driving the buggy about on the moon and all that. And many people believe that it was Stanley who actually filmed that. And so when you watch this film, when you watch The Shining, you see that there are many references to the moon landing. There are some really obvious ones. He's got the rocket on his jumper, and the same image is up in big pictures in the hall. And there are many alternative explanations for that, like they landed on the moon and Stanley was happy about it. Other people think, well, he's just leaving that in there the way he does to say, did I film it? And if so, was I on the moon? No. And one of the things I think is illustrative of his mentality, and he's got this reputation for being difficult. When Jack's typing and he's snapping at his wife about how he needs to work, there's a very famous scene where she realises that he's just been typing, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And the scene, she's going through it frantically like that. and the template or the organization of the words and the paragraphs on the page is different constantly to reinforce the idea. You can see it, that it's not just a photocopy. Those words have been typed out in a different format on every single page. So Stanley has told somebody to go and type that sentence out thousands of times. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. That was really typed out thousands of times. So Stanley could get the shot of that, and you could see that these are not just photocopies. So that shows that that attention to detail. And of course, we get the Kubrick shot. I mean, I think there are probably many, many examples of it, but there are two that are really strong, and one's back in Clockwork Orange, and one's here in The Shining. And this is where Stanley has the actor leaning on the door, and they're leaning on the door and they're looking down, and it's menacing, it's terrifying, and it's angry. And Stanley's under them on the floor with the camera shooting up, so you get that particular angle. And it just works really, really well. It's simple, really, but it just works really well. You see, just because they're not actually talking to anybody, because they're just facing a door, so it's kind of a pure, these are my emotions, not what I want, emotions that I'm going to give to someone else. This is what I'm actually going through behind a closed door. And I am a scary, scary cat. And Kubrick gets that across really well. So, I mean, it's just a wealth of possibility there for selection with Stanley Kubrick as well. And The Shining, so you know, came out in 1980.
Hello, Danny. Come and play with us, Danny. Forever and ever and ever.
Little pigs, let me come in. Not by the hair on your chinny chin chin. Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in. Here's Johnny.
41 years ago. Okay, so strong start. Who can possibly follow that? Well, maybe Oliver Stone. And I have to say as well as, apart from being a great director, he's also a tremendous writer. I think he's a great, great writer. And in fact, the reason I say that to you is because he wrote all of the films that I've given him. And that's not why they're in. I think they're tremendous films. And he wrote them. And he directed them. So I think he's a massively talented man, Oliver. And the three films I've chosen are JFK, Natural Born Killers, and Platoon. Yeah, there are others. I know there are. He also made Alexander the Great, which was a steaming pile of shit. And Colin Farrell was just crying his tits off all the way through it. So, I mean, I don't really know what he was doing there. Too much cocaine, I think, for Big Stoney. Anyway, JFK, why is that an important film? Well, obvious reasons. It completely debunks, as people on the internet love to say, completely debunks the official story of the JFK assassination. I mean, systematically and scientifically destroys it. And actually forced a new investigation into it, in which the second commission, not the Warren Commission, in the 70s concluded that it probably was a conspiracy. And that's a fact, so check that before you call somebody a conspiracy theorist. And then we've got Natural Born Killers. I don't know where the inspiration came from, but wow, that is a hard film to watch. I've watched it once, and I don't need to watch it again. You know, the film's emblazoned on my memory, and the scene, you know, where he's kind of realizing that her father is just a nasty abuser, sexual abuser, and a beast who attacks his family, and it's done in this kind of game show sitcom blend. It's really, really difficult to watch, and that's what he wanted to do, and he achieved it completely. And then you've got another totally different style of film, which I've chosen, and that's Platoon. And the reason I've chosen Platoon is the following. I think it's the best Vietnam film ever made. And if you ask me tomorrow and make a few good points, I might say, all right, it was Apocalypse Now. And it's interesting that it was father and son. Martin Sheen was in Apocalypse Now and Charlie Sheen was in Platoon. I just think that Platoon is he's just put it on a screen. You know, he just said, right, this is it. Make your mind up. What do you think? To a large extent. And how has he done it? Well, instant submersion is the technique, or rather what I've decided to call the technique. So as soon as the film starts, you're just thrown into Vietnam. You're there. It's dead bodies. It's body bags. It's people who look like they've been to hell and back, staring at you. I mean, they're supposed to be staring at Charlie Sheen, but effectively they're staring at you. And you think, what can put that look into a person's eyes? What terrors has this man seen? And Charlie's looking at this and he's all baby-faced and fresh and thinking, oh, fucking hell, I don't want to come back like that. And, you know, that really comes across to the viewer, but it's not overly accentuated. It's just there with Oliver Stone. I think that's the way he's done it. And really, immediately, you're kind of into the jungle. And there's this magnificent shot where the camera's moving through the jungle and it's looking up and you can see the sunlight breaking majestically through the trees, through the leaves. And what you've got is a canopy, foliage, trees, you know. And there's a tree line. And it forms a kind of snow globe whereby this thing that you're in, this world that you're in, is separate from that which is above. So it's beautiful beyond the trees. It's blue and it's bright and it's wonderful. And then below that line, it's hell. It's absolute hell. And you really get that kind of effect. Can I jump higher than that canopy? No, I can't. So can I escape? No, I can't. I'm in the fucking jungle now and I'm in hell and I could die at any time. And so that's what I mean by just putting on the screen. It doesn't need to be overemphasized because it's strong enough. But if you wanted to emphasize it, a good way of doing it would be narration. And that's the way it's done. It's done in the style of letters home to his granny, his grandma, whatever you want to call that. And he's writing these letters, and it's not overdone. It's just, you know, sporadic, and it's in there where you get a paragraph of a letter to his granny describing what's going on and the context around the events, which is a useful tool, and it's well done. Simple, honest, but also very perceptive. Because Oliver Stone, you see, was actually in Vietnam. He's a Vietnam vet, and he wrote this, and he directed it. And that kind of authenticity, I think, makes it stand out a mile from the rest.
I don't know. She's going on about why we kill the pigs. They're farmers. They got to make a living. All that kind of shit. Jeez.
Không không phải là Việt Cộng. Ở đây không có là Việt Cộng, không biết không? Tại sao vậy hả? Sao cái ông gà của tôi? Ông nín đây tôi nói.
Đừng có nói.
Hả?
Ông mi bằng chết.
Các ông mà. Các ông mà. Các ông đến đây giết heo, giết gà phải không? Ông mi bằng chết.
So yeah, I mean, just returning to that cinematic point of the way he's done it, he's painted hell onto the canvas of heaven, you know. So when you look at it, camera back, and you see the skies, and you see the trees, and you see the, you know, the general landscape of the place, it looks beautiful, objectively. But then he's just smeared terror and death all over it. And that's what it was, you know. And everything that you're seeing on the micro level here is destruction and death and desperation and the absence of hope, as he says at the start of the film. Hell being the absence of hope. And it's set against this beautiful backdrop. And you think, what the fuck are you boys doing? All of you. All of you. You know, just put the guns down. You know, it's not about what colour you are or what army you're in. Just stop it. You know, and more than that, way more than that, the rich bastards who are profiting off this war, you know, we need to find out who these people are. Honestly, it's just a sick demonstration of power over the poor. Because all the soldiers, as you go through the film, the vast majority of them are almost illiterate, small town boys who've been drafted and sent there, no choice. And no real opportunities in the hometowns either. So, I mean, that's connected to the idea that it's just a glamourless environment. There's no glamour involved in it. And so there are scenes where everyone's running around shooting each other and they're shouting and screaming. You know, the Americans, whether they be white, black or anything else, the Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, they're doing the same thing. They're all terrified out of their minds. And you can kill 15 people and then get shot in the head. There's no glamour to be found or achieved in this environment at all. And the way this is done, I think, is a kind of passive cinematography where he's not getting involved. A lot of directors do. You know, they want you to notice the camera. They want you to notice the cuts. He's not doing it like that. It's just kind of passive, blank, nice open squares. Obviously, you're going to get close-ups and they're well done, especially with the shade at night in the jungle with Willem Dafoe. It's a beautiful shot. But generally, he's not getting involved. And it's relentless, you know. It literally will not stop all the way through the film. It's just, whoa, fucking hell. And, you know, you think, Oliver, can you not just chill out for a bit? And he's answering you through the film itself. He's saying, no, I can't just chill out. The Vietnam War did not just chill out for a bit. And that is the point that he's making. And kind of sacrificing a lot in terms of what he was able to show of his directorial prowess throughout the film by just letting you decide what it is that you're watching. So Platoon, definitely got to go in there for me. As I say, possibly the best or certainly most honest telling of the Vietnam War. We're going to rock to Brian De Palma. Love Brian. So he is not always respected as much as he should be, in my opinion. And I've selected 3 films of his because he's got 3 that I would consider to be top films. And the first one is Carrie. Maybe it's an acquired taste, Carrie. Maybe it's not everybody's cup of tea. But it's a Stephen King book turned into a really good film, which you got to get some credit for. Because there's been so many examples of really good Stephen King books turned into really bad films, you know, Pet Sematary and Christine and all these kinds of... It, absolutely crap and long. And so to turn one of those horror films, not your Green Mile and, you know, Shawshank Redemption and stuff like that, which is written in a totally different style. No, the Stephen King classic horror stuff. To put that on a screen well is not easy, and he did it with Carrie. That end scene, you know, the school hall, the whatever it is, the prom they call it, and there's blood and all that kind of stuff, and holes is flying around the place, and that's wonderful. And then you've got Carlito's Way. Nothing to do with each other. Carrie and Carlito's Way are completely different. I cannot think off the top of my head of a similarity between the two, which is good. But there are obvious comparisons between Carlito's Way and the third one, Scarface. So what's Carlito's Way? Carlito's Way is Al Pacino gets out of prison trying to find the dream. His dream is to live a peaceful life. But he's got to do a little bit of crime first and then get out of there, which is not easy. Not easy at all, especially not when you've got such a reputation as being a big-time smack dealer in New York. But that's not the film we're talking about. We're talking about Carlito's Way really has a big brother, and its big brother is Scarface, and it's Al Pacino and Brian De Palma collaboration again. And what is it really? What's the story? Well, it's Tony Montana. And he is a Cuban, okay? And he's got an American father. And he travels to America in what's recorded in history as the Cuban crime wave. And he is rough. And more than intelligent, he's ambitious. He's not stupid, but he's not he's not an academic. But he's sharp, he's clever, and he's got balls of steel. Pardon the expression or not. That's the one I'm using. He's got balls of steel. And that's really the kind of crux of the whole film. And he comes to America and he's got the American dream and he wants to be rich and he wants to be powerful and he wants to be a million miles away from where he is and what he is at the start of the film, which is poor and oppressed by Castro and by Batista before that. And, of course, by American imperialism and Spanish imperialism before that. And so it's a long, difficult history for the Cubans. And he arrives in Miami, and he's not taking any prisoners and he's not asking any favours. He's just taking what he wants. And that's what the film's about, really. And so, how does Brian De Palma choose to tell this story? Well, he uses, for his own reasons, and I don't mind it, he uses pictures of a dream. So if you go back to Carlito's Way, there's a prominent imagery where there's a picture, you even find it at the end in the train station, right, where it shows people silhouetted on the beach. And as you zoom into it, the girl starts dancing. Yeah. So that's the dream. That's what he wants to do. That's where he wants to be. He wants to be on a beach, not in an ambulance. And Scarface is very similar. So, for example, we've got a scene in the food truck where they work, the little restaurant, street restaurant where they work, and behind it is a poster of something quite similar, of a dream, of a fanciful destination where everything is okay. And we pan down and back from that to show the reality of where they are at that point, which is working in the kitchen of this food truck in most unsalubrious circumstances. And Tony Montana is not feeling it one little bit. He wants to be out there selling that yayo, not scrubbing dishes. But we can see that juxtaposition between the reality of the moment and the beauty of the dream, And I think that's what he's trying to get across all the time, Brian De Palma, with that pictorial representation that he uses so much. And he's often accused of bad framing. And I understand why. When you watch his films, you think, really? Do you know what I mean? Tony Montana's in the bottom of the screen like that, in the bottom corner. He's his star. Why have you got him in the bottom corner like that? And then just off, it's just a lot of the time it looks just off, where if you did that at college or university and you handed it in, you guarantee your tutor's going to give you a D or whatever, or a C. He's going to take marks away from you because he's going to say, well, that framing is terrible, man. Read a book. That's shit. But Brian De Palma does it constantly, and I don't think it's an accident. I think he's doing it when he's doing it. And it's a kind of exhibition of scale, right? So Tony Montana is larger than life. He's a massive character, huge in terms of his energy and his power as an individual. And he's smashed onto the screen every time you see him. But physically, he's a small dude. He's Al Pacino. He's a little guy. He's not big, he's not tall, he's nothing in that sense. And so Brian De Palma's constantly playing with that. He's saying, we're all big and we're all small. It just depends on the context. And he's doing it constantly. So when you see those scenes, and you'll see Tony Montana, and he's in the bottom of the screen, he's talking to people across the table, and he's bottom right. And he's talking to them, and as I say, you think, what are you doing there, Bri? And then in the next scene, he's come round to something where Tony Montana is very centralised, and the framing's changed entirely, and you think, actually, you do know what you're doing, don't you? And now he's dominant and he's prominent in the scene, from being small and seemingly insignificant and injured. He's bleeding. And so Brian De Palma, I think, is playing with that idea of, sometimes you're a windscreen, sometimes you're a fly. And it always gives Tony Montana a chance to just jump onto the screen from that position to that. Bang. Really well done, I think. And back to the story a little bit. For me, if you're going to talk about arcs, I think we're going with a car crash to car crash type arc. Because at the start of the film, as I say, he's more or less a refugee. He's been expelled from Cuba for not having the right attitude or whatever. And he's arrived in America and he's poor and he's basically pissed on by everybody who looks at him, including Latinos. Nobody rates him, nobody respects him. And he goes through all this journey of death and conquering other people and other gangs and all that kind of stuff to become the hero of the piece, and at least in his own mind. But he's just not. Do you know what I mean? He's not a hero. He's an anti-hero, yeah, sure. But he lacks class. He's got no style around him. He's got no panache. He doesn't know how to carry it. He looks out of place constantly. And this starts to play on his mind. And then there's also the realization that he doesn't really like the dream. And what a terrible fucking surprise. You spend all your life with just a tremendous determination to get somewhere. And then when you get there, you don't like it at all. He just finds it kind of flat and uninspiring. It's just cocaine and sex and violence and big houses. And he's thinking, fucking hell, is this it? Is this all there is? And so you've got that silk hat on a pig thing, where he's got the houses and he's got the cars and he's got, the opulence, but he hasn't got the class. He hasn't got the education. And you're also putting a crown on a peasant in that way. So, yeah, you've got the crown, mate, and you are the king, but we don't respect you, really. We tolerate you because we're afraid of you. But, we still consider ourselves superior to you. It's just that we're absolutely terrified that you might kill us and our families. And so I think that's the message of the film for me. Seems to be careful what you wish for, or at least that's one of the messages of it. Before you embark on a 20-year killing spree to try and get somewhere, make sure that somewhere is actually where it is that you really want to be. And so, yeah, Scarface, absolutely magnificent film.
Too far, Tony. I ain't not, Mel. You are. Can't shoot a cop. Whoever said you was one? Wait a minute! Sure, Mel. Maybe you can handle yourself one of them first-class tickets to the resurrection. Fucking punk. So long, Mel. Have a good trip. Fuck you! Okay. Do you want to play rough? Okay. Uno. Say hello to my little friend. Okay. Do you want to play rough? Do you want more?
One of my favourites, really long one, but I bet I've seen it 30, 40 times. And definitely, for me, in the pantheon of great films. Now we're going to hit Mr. Ridley Scott. Most successful brother of Tony Scott, who directed True Romance and Domino, which are identical, actually, in terms of the way that Tony Scott filmed them. So what's Ridley produced? Well, a lot. But the ones that I've selected, the top three that I've selected from my perspective, are Alien, which is an absolute milestone for women because Sigourney Weaver's character is the main character of the film and is a soldier, and I think she's a scientist as well. And, there's nothing about it that's gender specific. She is what she is, She is the most qualified, most intelligent person on that ship and in that circumstance to deal with the situation, and so she does. And it's not heavily laden with these gender references all day long, You don't have to lay it on with a spoon. It's just there. She's doing it. because she can, and it's great in that sense. And then we've got a completely different kind of film, which is Gladiator, which kind of sealed the deal with those kinds of films, because we'd had Spartacus many years before, and that was considered to be the greatest kind of Roman epic, maybe along with Ben-Hur. And Ridley comes along with Gladiator and kind of remakes it. And between Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix and others, you get a tremendous, tremendous film. Real attention to detail on that. And the computer animation is done well. It's not like a Michael Bay film where it's completely unnecessary and masturbatory as well. No, it's there because it needs to be there, otherwise you can't have the film. And the third one I wanted to look at in more detail was Blade Runner. Now, my mate Johnny Spence told me to do Alien, and I wanted to, but I didn't in the end. And he's going to say it's because I'm too scared to watch Alien, but I deny that. So, Blade Runner interests me on so many levels. What is it about? It's set more or less now. Made in 1982, but it's set more or less now. And we all know that when you watch these futuristic films, from the context in which the film was actually set, you think, oh my God, that's terrible. That's not actually the case, not in every way anyway, with Blade Runner. It's quite good in the way that it predicts the society that we live in now, on many levels anyway. So what's the crack with it? Humans have gone out into space, doing what they do, conquering places and taking what they can. And as part of that, they've invented kind of artificial intelligence, humanoid robots that are called replicants. They look and talk and act like humans to a large extent, with some differences. They are stronger, they are faster, and they have a more kind of fluctuating emotional spectrum. So they'll go quite childlike to quite angry, because they've only got 4 years lifespan. So they're kind of rushing to develop these emotions and not really taking the time that we would to develop it. And so that's a problem with the design that we explore. And so we'll look at the film itself. When you're actually watching it, what do you see? Well, prominently at the beginning, you see pyramids. So if you watched last week's Power Hour, I was talking about Teotihuacan being a city in Mexico with pyramids of a particular design. And when you watch Blade Runner, there are ships coming in from the sky, docking at this one main particular central building, the design of which is exactly like those pyramids, but massive and black. And I don't think that's a coincidence, you know. I think that many people have looked at those pyramids and wondered who built them and what they were used for. And so we see those pyramids used in this design. And apart from that, and a few Coca-Cola signs, the place is an absolute shithole. I mean, there's no nature. There's no trees, no flowers, no parks. Not so much as a pretty girl. It's just dark and it's raining all the time. It's real dystopian stuff. And these replicants, you see, they're only given 4 years to live. So just returning to the general idea of it. So Harrison Ford is the bounty hunter, really. It's a bounty hunter story, essentially. And he's been told to find these replicants who've gone rogue and kill them, eliminate them, which is easier said than done. And he does that. He basically goes through them with relative ease. He takes a few licks every time he encounters one of these people, but he kills them with his gun. And then we get to the scene, which is definitely one of the most beautiful shots I've seen in cinema, where you've got Rutger Hauer on the roof, and he's just saved Harrison Ford's life. Harrison Ford's character is trying to kill him, and he saves his life. You see, he's artificial intelligence, remember, and he's sitting on the roof in the rain, and he's talking about the things that he's seen in space with such incredible intensity. And he's talking about his life, you see, and he says that we all disappear in time like teardrops in the rain. And that's when he looks at Harrison Ford and you realise he's crying. You just can't see it because it's raining. And also there's that place in history motif there where you're all important for a short time, but then you disappear like a teardrop in the rain. And so we're looking, really, for me, this film, more than anything else, is an examination of the human condition. Why? Because these replicants are essentially terrified of death. They know they've got a 4-year window that they can't extend, and they don't know exactly when they were born. And that's similar to the human condition. So they've got that fear of death. And also, they are humanoid creations, right? They were created by us in our image. And they look like us and they talk like us, but they're just a bit better in certain fundamental ways. And that's precisely what we're doing now. I mean, are we really far away from that? No. No. And when are we doing it? At the fucking same time that they were saying we'd be doing it back in 1982. Ridley Scott was making this film 40 years ago. And that part of it is more or less the same. We are creating humanoids in our image. And in the film, the question is, should we really be valuing their lives on the same level as ours? Are they human? Are they less than us? What is our attitude towards them? And it also raises a question in my mind. If we are now kind of racing towards the idea of creating people in our image, which is what we hear in the Bible all the time, that we were created in God's image.
Better get it up. I'm gonna have to kill you. 6, 7. Go to hell or go to heaven. That's the spirit.
So the final guy on the scene is Mr. Martin Scorcese. We like Martin. We've got to like Martin. He's definitely one of the best directors, as all these guys are, actually. And so the three that I've chosen basically for Martin are Raging Bull, Wolf of Wall Street, and Goodfellas. What do those three films have in common? Well, they're all based on true stories. Raging Bull, of course, Jake LaMotta, the boxer. The rise and fall, and this is key to all of it, the rise and fall of Jake LaMotta. And then you've got The Wolf of Wall Street, true story, the rise and fall of what's called Jordan Belfort. And then you've got Goodfellas, which is the rise and fall of Henry Hill. And they're all based on true stories. What you'll notice about Martin Scorsese as a person, and a director, I suppose, is his love of Robert De Niro. I actually don't like Robert De Niro. I think he's a good actor. I do. He's a bit samey for me. But he does what he does well. And Martin Scorsese always and obviously appreciates that because he uses him in a lot of his films. And so what is this style of Martin Scorsese and how can we see that in Goodfellas? Not easy to really explain, but narration is a big thing. He uses narration far more than most Hollywood directors. So in the case of Goodfellas, it's Henry Hill kind of telling his story all the way through. And we see the same thing in Wolf of Wall Street, of what happened, of his own life, actually. And it's a useful tool to give the film, to get the film across to people, because you're not having to make all these scenes. He's describing what happened, over kind of generic images very often of parties and driving down the road and kind of, scenery type stuff. He's narrating the story of what actually happened. And I mean, that's a lot easier than having to film it and show it actually in scenes. So there's a nice little trick there that he uses a lot. And as I say, for Wolf of Wall Street, he does the same thing. And And what else does he do? He does these long pan shots where you'll just go down a long table, for example, and you'll see everybody in the middle of a conversation, you know, and that gives atmosphere and flavour, and it feels like you're being introduced to all these people really quickly. That's clever. He does these kind of walk-through shots. There's a more technical name for it than that, but you'll go through like restaurants and kitchens and even offices, as we see in Wolf of Wall Street. And while he's doing it, he's so busy what he's doing. Where he's using what we call handoffs. So I'm walking down with this, and I put that on a table, and I turn around, and I nearly bump into a guy, and then the camera starts following that guy, and then he puts his papers down on a desk, and the phone rings, and then someone walks past him, and the image is thrown onto this guy, and they're kind of using it like a baton, where they pass a baton round, and they use that technique to walk you round the area that you're in, whether it's a restaurant or it's a bar or it's an office. It doesn't really matter, and that's a clever way of building atmosphere, and you get this frenetic bang 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 in the way that he shoots everything. And even the narration is fast. A couple of things that they have in common as well. Many years tend to pass. So in the case of Raging Bull, you're talking about 30 years go by during the film. Maybe 20 years in the case of Wolf of Wall Street. Same again, 25 years. Nah, more, probably 30 years in the case of Goodfellas. And we get these pyramid arcs. I mean, I call them pyramid arcs. Normally you're going to get an arc of a person like that, a story like that. But Scorcese likes to build his characters up, his main characters up, so they become world champion, or they become super rich, or they become top gangster, and then they come down. And there's a kind of, you're watching them spiral out of control until they crash at the end. And he likes to show us these heroes crash, you know, as we've seen in all of these, Raging Bull, Wolf of Wall Street, and Goodfellas. It goes tits up for them guys, big time. Now, what's the point? Well, if in terms of the style of Martin Scorsese and why he does it like that, well, you'll see it in his piece to camera. It's not piece de camera. When you hear people say that, they're just idiots. It's piece to camera. So it's where you're talking to the camera like I am now. And so what that does is, in the case of a film where you see it in Goodfellas, it's done by Ray Liotta as Henry Hill. It's done by Leonardo DiCaprio in The Wolf of Wall Street. And they talk to the camera. So it's got the same effect as the narration in terms of what it does for you. It means you don't have to shoot all these scenes, because you can just have him, oh yeah, then we did this, and then we did that, and then we did the other. You don't need to see it, because I'm telling you what happened. So as a storyteller, it's much easier if you do it that way. But it also incorporates the viewer. It's like saying, yeah, all right, I'll just put all this on hold, all these people that you can see behind me, and I'm going to talk to you, because it's me and you, really. You know, I'm here with you as the viewer, and you're here with me, and everyone else is kind of supplemental to that. I'll just hit the microphone. So what's the winner? Give us a winner, Big John. What is it? Goodfellas. I've just been talking about it. Didn't do it like that for any particular reason. I thought about it and I thought Goodfellas. Why? Because I think it just achieves what it sets out to achieve.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Why don't you go inside and get yourself together and clean up?
Go, you want some? Huh? Oh, hey! Hey. What are you doing? I swear my fucking mother, if you touch her again, you're dead! Huh?
You gonna pay?
Just give us the fucking money!
Huh? I can't. I can't, I swear. Let's go.
What fucking lions? I ain't going near any lions, Jimmy!
Just throw them over the moat.
Right.
No!
Right.
I'll get it! I'll get the money!
They must really feed each other to the lions down there, because the guy gave the money right up.
I swear to Christ, I'll get the money!
And we got
better than anything else, and he really does get the camera in there and bring the viewer into it. You kind of feel almost immediately that you know Henry Hill and you know, Tommy DeSimone and Jimmy Burke and these characters. You know, you kind of feel a connection to them, and you feel like you're in their world. and you're part of it almost. And then when the film ends, it's like getting out of a cold bath. You've been submerged in it for 2 hours. And I really think that Martin Scorsese is possibly the best at that, just at maintaining your enthusiastic attention for a long period of time. So these are my favourites. These is what I've looked at. These are the ones I've looked at. Director's greatest hits. What have we got? We've got Alfred Hitchcock with Psycho in 1960. We've got Stanley Kubrick with The Shining in 1980. We've got Oliver Stone with Platoon in 1986. We've got Brian De Palma with Scarface in 1983. We've got Ridley Scott with Blade Runner in 1982. And finally, Martin Scorsese with Goodfellas in 1990. And I'll leave you with the question, what the fuck happened to Hollywood? That's enough from me for today. Power to you, power to me, power to the people.